I grew up calling them raccoon perch.
And the reason for that is if you ever see them, they have these really distinct black vertical bars going down their body. If you call them yellow perch on the coast where we're from, they look at you like you got 3 heads.
Right.
Well, welcome back, guys, to another edition of Better Fishing with Two Ball Biologists. Ben, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, this one is right in my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I enjoy this type of fishing and this animal, so I'm glad we're doing this. And so today we have a special guest with us, Powell Wheeler. Powell, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I am one of 2 fisheries biologists in District 9. And District 9 is everything north, south, and west of Asheville, is how I like to tell it to people. It's a really cool district. It has everything. We have stripers, we have walleye, we've got yellow perch that we're going to talk about, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, half the stock trout, and it just really keeps me on my toes.
Did you hear that? Half the stock trout. He just threw that in there. Just half. Come to D9 if you want to catch trout, is what he's saying.
He has none of the foothills.
He has none of the foothills.
No.
Yeah.
All of the mountain, none of the foothills.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, as Powell said, we're talking about yellow perch today, which is something we haven't talked about in the past. So this is new for us, but it's one of my favorite animals. So
Let me set y'all up for this. Let me tell you a story about how this came to be. You guys have heard Powell before. He was we had him on last year when we did Hiwassee stripers. We even talked about Hiwassee walleyes, which we'll get more to down the road, and how we didn't catch one a year ago. But so I wake up at, I don't know, it was sometime in January. And I've been awake ever since, it seemed, to go on this trip. And yeah, it was the wee hours of the morning. I made breakfast for my family, got them out the door, and I headed off to the mountains. I picked Corey up. We got to Asheville.
we were still heading to the
We
mountains.
drove 3 or 4 more hours, and
Seemed that way. It wasn't quite that long.
so it took all of a day to get there.
It did.
From New Bern, North Carolina.
It did. It did
You
take all
know.
of a day to get there.
And I mean, I've said this before on this podcast, and I mean it, like tip of the cap to the North Carolina DOT, because who knew they made as many roads as they have? Because I've seen all of them during this voyage. And
Yeah. Once again, we went to the far western tip of the
we may
state.
not ever be able to get there again.
We probably will never go there again as a podcast, but we once again have traversed the state all the way to where I'm pretty sure we were in Georgia or Tennessee.
I mean, we were like, what should we talk about? And for some reason we said, let's do as many episodes as we can on the thing that's as far away from us as possible. And we did it. And
Yes.
it's been a huge success. But yeah, so we drove like for 17 years or so, and we got there, and the next morning I'm already exhausted. The trip has not even started yet, and I'm exhausted, and we wake up at
4:30,
the wee
5 o'clock,
hours,
yeah.
and we head to the lake, and we get there, and we got Don, a retired enforcement guy who's now a guide, knows the area really well. He tells us all the secrets, and he's like, y'all go for it.
And we went for it.
And we went for it, and it took us, and we went for about most of the day,
And we did this.
and we caught 0 fish.
We just kind of looked up at the sun and was like, this is nice.
0
It's a nice day.
fish.
Yeah, it was.
Monday
was pretty rough.
It was tough.
Yeah,
it was tough.
Monday was pretty rough.
And at the end of the first day, Corey and I actually found a few fish.
We did.
Blind hog and all.
Blind hog and all.
But we actually found a few fish, and we caught some. And thankfully, after that, we kind of got the ball rolling on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we drove and we drove and we drove and we drove and we drove.
I think they got the point. Yeah, it's a long ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the area of the state we're talking about is that very southwestern corner. It's when we were doing yellow perch, we were on Lake Appalachia, which is it's the last reservoir in the state before you get to Tennessee.
That's correct. I mean, you guys drove all the way to Murphy and then drove another 45 minutes. I mean, that's a drive.
Yeah.
But,
so when they say Murphy to Manteo is the state, that's a lie, by the way, because there's another hour of the state on the other side of Murphy, and there's at least another hour of the state on the other side of Manteo. So anyway, I digress.
And I mean, Appalachia Dam is so close to Tennessee, you can hit a golf ball off the dam into Tennessee. I mean, it really is.
Advise you doing that. The TVA might not like it.
They might not, but in theory, it could be done. But it's that close.
It's that close. That's right. But it's the last water before you get into Tennessee and it's still the Hiwassee River at that point.
That's correct.
Okay.
But once it goes through Appalachia, it has what we call a remote powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically dry below the dam, and everything just goes through like a 10-foot diameter pipe to the powerhouse into Tennessee.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So it's almost like not only does North Carolina stop, but the water pretty much stops too at that point.
And so where does it goes to the powerhouse? Then where does the water go? Does it come back into the river someplace else?
Yeah, they generate there, and honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it dumps into a reservoir down there or another reservoir, if it's back in the river. So,
interesting.
I did not know that.
My maps stop it.
We only saw the lake. We didn't see. Yeah, we only saw the lake. We didn't see what was beyond the dam at Appalachia for sure. But yeah, we were back in Appalachia, which we did a trout show. A trout show last year?
We did.
Yeah,
we did.
Trout podcast.
It's a really neat area. It's probably one of my favorite areas in the mountains for sure.
It's wonderful,
and it's kind of off the beaten path. And the interesting thing there, I grew up calling them raccoon perch.
I did too.
And in the coast, that's pretty
what
much what they were called.
Yeah, if you call them yellow perch on the coast where we're from, they look at you like you got three heads.
Right, but they're the same fish.
In District 9, they like to say coontail instead of raccoon, but
interesting.
Yeah, so we have a different variation.
Interesting.
And the reason for that is if you ever see them, we'll put an image up if you're watching us on video of a yellow perch. They have these really distinct black vertical bars going down their body. They're bright yellow, or they're kind of greenish olive yellow in color is the background. And when they're in spawn, they have big bright red fins going on. And then they have those very distinct black vertical bars or dark olive vertical bars going down their body. And so everybody said, it looks like a raccoon. So that's why they call them that. But,
and the reason why, and Powell can kind of shed some light on this maybe a little bit, the reason why we went there to do this, because they're all over the state, but in some of these mountain lakes, they get to be pretty good sized. And that was what we were trying to do, was showcase those fishing opportunities. Powell said something about his trout fisheries were doing pretty good, but
we wanted to show him that the yellow perch fisheries are doing pretty
there's
good
also
too.
more to Powell than just
there's
just
a lot
trout.
More. That's a whole nother podcast. There's a lot to Powell.
Yeah, yellow perch, they're kind of interesting. They're not native to District 9. They just started appearing in all our reservoirs in like the early 2000s, just one at a time, like they started popping up. So they were getting bussed around by who knows who, and generally that's really bad in fisheries when new fish show up in the reservoirs. But yellow perch they have these relatively small populations in all these lakes, and so it's the best case scenario for introduced fish.
So they're not native to District 9. I did not know this.
No, they're
because they are native to like the eastern part of the state.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's right.
We're kind of on the very southernmost edge of their existence. I mean, for those of you who don't know, they're big time in the Great Lakes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like yellow perch is one of the things in the Great Lakes region. And so we're kind of on that like a lot of the animals that are in D9, you're kind of on that southernmost tip of their range.
Yeah.
And so that's curious that yellow perch were not native. I did not know that.
I didn't either.
I learned something new today.
Fun fact.
They're native north of us and east of us.
Okay.
But not in the headwaters of the Little Tennessee.
Powell, do yellow perch need water?
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
So they're much like many other fish
They do need water.
that need water.
They haven't crawled out yet.
Okay.
But who knows what will happen in the future.
So I have a question to that. Have you seen, when yellow perch showed up, have you seen any negative impacts to them arriving on the scene?
None at all. And I think that's mostly because in everywhere except probably Lake Junaluska, they are very small populations. And, we go do a big gillnet survey and catch 2 or 3 for the whole week.
So do you see more in Junaluska?
Lake Junaluska is different. So this is about a 200-acre lake in Haywood County, so it's really small.
We saw it. We took a detour. Don't worry.
Oh, did you?
But we digress.
And
It's one of the
Chief took a wrong
Sounds
turn.
like-
took a wrong turn.
That sounds lost. So
Yeah, we were only lost for half a mile. But anyway,
nice. That was an accomplishment, getting lost in Haywood County. So
thank you.
well done. But in Lake Junaluska, it has a lot of them, but they grow really small, but just big enough to eat. So there's a group of anglers that target those. But in all the other reservoirs, very low population density, and then they grow to very large sizes.
Yes, they do.
So we see 12 and 14-inch yellow perch all the time,
Right.
which is, I think, very unusual. I'm not an expert on yellow perch up north, but I think smaller is more common.
I think they're that size up north for sure. That's why they're so popular. They a 12 to 14-inch fish is fairly common in like the Great Lakes region.
Yeah.
But in North Carolina, that is not common.
No.
Because you're right on the edge of their range. It's not where they love to be, so to speak. So you can see that along the coast. You can see a 14-inch yellow perch along the coast, but you really have to know where they are and how to target them. It's a lot like what you're talking about. They're kind of small.
Yeah.
Like the population that you're actually, where you find them is kind of in a real small group. You're not going to find them everywhere.
Yeah. In my fishing growing up, we grew up fishing the Chowan River a lot for brim. And when we called raccoon perch.
It's fine. I'm
for
good.
now.
Yeah.
Because I was on the Chowan River.
Yeah.
I called raccoon perch. It was more incidental while we were brim fishing. We never actually really targeted them.
Yeah.
I know there's people that did,
Yeah,
but we never did.
And in my childhood, growing up on the noose, generally throughout the times that most people fish, like the summertime, the early springtime, that's exactly the way they were. You just ran across one on a beetle spoon or something like that and caught one, and they'd be okay size, nothing major. But in the wintertime, in the very, very early spring, like February-ish, when the water's still kind of cold and they're just coming out of spring, you can find groups of them where you do find those 12 to 14-inch fish, really, really nice yellow perch. I mean, I can remember as a child with my dad breaking ice on the Neuse River to go yellow perch fishing. We were nuts. But I thought it was the best thing ever. I mean, literally you're crunching ice going across the river to get to a spot, and you'd crunch out. It was almost like ice. You crunch out a little hole because you kind of knew where they would probably be, and fish that hole, and there they were. And they would all, they're all about like that, something like that. And they are delicious to eat.
Yes, they are.
Delicious.
Yeah. They don't have any problem.
Well, they're in that same family of walleye.
Mm-hmm.
They're in that Perchidae family. I guess, is it still called Perchidae? I don't even know anymore. They probably changed it.
Yeah.
This is fish science from 25 years ago. So I'm sure somebody has changed the name of the family now, but it's the perch family.
Yeah.
The true perch family.
Right.
And walleye are, as most everybody knows that's ever caught one, are delicious. And yellow perch are that same way, kind of have that firm flesh, real nice flavor, kind of mild. I don't know. I love eating them. So.
Oh yeah. They are unequaled, in my opinion.
Yeah.
My opinion, that's the best eating fish we have in District 9.
Is a yellow perch?
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Cool.
Interesting.
I don't know where you rank crappie versus walleye, but...
Oh, my wife would rank crappie way down on the list. My wife can't stand them.
Yeah. So I go...
Don't understand that, but...
Yellow perch, crappie, and walleye in the Powell Wheeler scale of eatability.
Oh. So crappie's above walleye for you?
Yes, I would definitely think that.
Interesting. That's not true for me.
Everybody's got their own taste. It's okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Everybody got to do your thing.
Well, we can agree on the 3, if not the order, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what do these fish like to eat? The yellow perch. What do they feed on mostly?
They eat small things like bugs and crayfish and invertebrates and probably some fish too. But in contrast to their cousin the walleye, they have much smaller mouths and they sort of hang out on the bottom and just eat whatever they can find. They're not shad eaters like walleye are. So and they like to associate, like in a lot of my reservoirs are like very nutrient poor, so it's very clear water. And you get these like beds of Cara, which is kind of a algae plant on the bottom.
Sounds
and
familiar.
they like, do you see that down here?
No. We saw that where you're talking.
Yeah. They really like associating with the Cara beds. And we found some that in one of the lakes, Glenville, we were like working up fish, and one of them was full of like these teeny little mussels called like pea mussels or something. It was just kind of odd. So apparently they eat things with shells too.
So they're pretty much an omnivore. Pretty much eat about anything as long as they can fit it in their mouth.
Yeah.
And they're for the most part towards the bottom. Like they're mainly along the bottom. They're not suspended as much. You don't see them as suspended as much.
No, not as much. They seem to be much more bottom oriented.
Well, walleye are too. I mean, their cousin is very, very much. I mean, I'm sure. Don't write me. I'm sure all of them can be suspended in schools. I understand that, but generally, walleye are benthic feeders. They're on the bottom, feeding off of stuff that's along the bottom. So.
Yeah, you might get some mail from some walleye fishermen about that.
I'm sure. Whatever.
Oh, they get fired up. They'll be anywhere.
Send it to Ben Ricks, not to Corey.
Two bald biologists at ncwildlife.gov. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
I will forward all of your critiques directly to the chief.
Yeah. Be like, the guy that said they're not suspended is an idiot. Duly noted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except when they are.
Yeah.
So, but no, that was one of the, I'm glad you brought that up, because almost they may suspend on occasion, but they're almost always associated with weeds.
Yes.
I mean, if they're not on weeds, it's because they're going from one patch of weeds to the next patch of weeds. In my recollection, I don't know if I've ever caught one just wide open. I'm sure it's happened.
But
they are structured.
Yes, I wouldn't necessarily call it weeds. I would call it structure. They are definitely associated with structure because, I mean, me growing up, I caught them on the train trestle at New Bern. That's where they were. There's not a lot of weeds there, or at least there weren't at the time, but they were on those pylons. So
they definitely seem to like weeds or structure or treetop or something like that.
And they're definitely in groups.
Right.
Generally, when they're together, a lot of times they're together in big schools,
especially in the early spring when they're trying to spawn.
Yep.
In fact, if you're around them in the spring when they're spawning, generally you're around all of them almost. You know, like if you're in the zone where they are, that's where they are, and they're not going to be anywhere else because they get in big groups when they spawn. So
yeah.
And we were on the tail end of that when we fished at Appalachia, I think. So,
yeah.
But they still were in groups because there was this one spot when we finally found them where we were able to just kind of chip away at them a little bit.
Yeah, just stay there.
So.
Yeah, the thing you talked about, the grass, that's exactly where they were in Appalachia. Yeah. They were on top of a weed bed of some kind. I don't know if it was Cara per se, but it was some kind of weed.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the weed.
You know how you know it's Cara?
How, Ben?
You smell it.
Well, yeah.
It smells like it should go in spaghetti sauce. It's like this garlicky. Yeah. Anyway, it's former life. Fish nerd out.
I thought you were going to tell me something completely different to throw me for a loop. But yes, I knew it smelled like Sorry. Sometimes you bring stuff up just to see if I'm just going to fall for your trap. So I'm a little nervous sometimes. Just be honest with you.
That is true.
Yeah. You'll open the door and be like, wonder what idiot's going to run through the door and let me catch him.
Well, in a former life, working for a different agency, I did a lot of aquatic plant work.
Well, we do too. I mean,
it was a fun fact about Cara because I haven't seen it in North Carolina that much. It's only in the mountains that I've seen.
And it's in the Piedmont too.
Yeah,
I saw it in.
Well, I mean, it's not in the coast where I did a lot of work.
Sure. Yeah, but anyway, they were on weed beds.
Yeah.
This guy, they were.
Fun fact about plants.
Fun fact about plants.
I'm trying to expand. I might get on a plant podcast next.
Yeah, you never know. That'll be riveting, I'm sure. But yeah, that's where they were. They were just over top of those weed beds. You'd put the bait down there and bang, you'd catch one. The one thing I would say about the fishing and our fishing experience, it kind of coming like, it's almost like if you were anywhere outside the school, you can forget it.
Yeah.
It was like, you can just forget it.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be, and that school would move. It wouldn't move a lot, but it would move, that school would kind of move around. But if you were outside that school by 1.5 feet, you were not going to catch a fish. I mean, person beside you could be catching them. You're like, man, I'm doing the exact same thing. Why am I not catching them? Well, it's because you're outside the school. You had to be on that school in order to catch them.
So on day one, when we first found them, at the tail end of day one, when it was starting to look like we drove,
it was bleak,
a very long way.
Yeah, there was depression in the boat.
It was tough.
It was tough.
Anyway,
it was dark days.
All of a sudden, the wind shifted. It got a little bit warmer. I think the fish were deeper, and because the sun started baking a bank, we started catching fish. Now, Corey had already about given up hope on catching a yellow perch.
I was bluegilling.
And was proceeding
to whack them.
An aside, Lake Appalachia has a very healthy bluegill population in
Yes,
it.
yes, it does.
It does.
And Corey was like, maybe we're going to do us a bluegill show out here. And it was looking like it was. I mean, it was a bluegill show for sure.
I could have done a bluegill show for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, okay, you keep bluegilling. I'm gonna
keep doing what we're supposed to be doing.
I'm gonna keep trying. And all of a sudden, he was like, oh, I got a yellow perch, and I was throwing a beetle spin. He was fishing a crickets under a bobber. Mm-hmm. We'll talk more about that rig here in a second. But all of a sudden, we found this patch where all of a sudden the fish were just.
We caught 6.
We caught like 6 in a period of like 20 minutes.
At the most. Yeah, it probably wasn't even that long. It was 6 pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, hey, we're on to something.
Right. And so we were like, okay, we got something. This is the beetle spin I was using. This is old school. But it was just a yellow one. And the other thing I saw was I was seeing the fish tracking in behind it. They were attracted to that spinner. They were tracking in behind it. Then Corey would throw that cricket in behind that. And it didn't take long before he'd get a bite.
Yeah, the water is fairly clear. As you mentioned, Powell,
yes.
The water's pretty clear. And you could see the fish following his bait. And for sometimes they would hit that. I mean, sometimes he'd catch one on a beetle spin. But a lot of times it was like, oh, I'm interested and I might tap it or whatever, but I'm not really like trying to be aggressive with it. But you put a bait under a bobber and they'd be like, yeah, I'll take that. Thank you.
And so the next day we fished around. We stayed in that carra bed and tried to fish around. Finally, I said, hey,
let's go back to where we caught them.
Why don't we go right back to where we caught them yesterday? And this time we were actually fishing small minnows, like crappie minnows.
Really small.
Little small gold shiners.
Yeah, little small gold shiners.
And we went right back to where we were. We even saw them on the depth finder.
Yep.
And we could have sat there and caught.
We did for a while.
Yeah.
And they ranged in size from 6 to 7 inches up to maybe a 12. We might have caught a couple 12 inchers that during that period. So yeah, there was various sizes there for sure. Fun to catch.
Oh yeah, and we had to use a slip bobber.
Yep.
And because the fish were sitting at about 10, 11 feet deep, and that was unique for me, crickets and minnows on a slip bobber, because I never had to do that in the coast. But there's also no mountains in the coast, and
it's true.
The water's a lot shallower. So
all of that's true.
So yeah, we had a slip bobber rig. Here, I got one right here behind me, and this right here, it just slips up. It hits this knot right there. That bead hits that knot, and you can adjust that knot in my line. You can adjust that to fish at whatever depth. I fished a significant amount of weight just to get it down really quick, and then a small hook here on the bottom. And this is just an ultralight reel.
You don't need more than that.
You don't need any more than that for these fish. So,
you don't.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, it's what I grew up doing. It's taking me
home week.
It was nostalgic for sure. You picked up that beetle spin. I was like, whatever, dude. You can fish that beetle spin until you're blue in the face. I could care less. I'm going to bobber fish the rest of the day, even if it's just bluegill. I'm on bobber fish. I'm good with it. And it worked out that the yellow perch would hit the bobber too, so
Mhm.
that worked out. So
And we
it was
trolled
cool.
around. We kind of slow trolled
Yeah.
around a little bit too, just to kind of help expand our search, and that worked out.
Yeah, it was helpful that we found the fish the first day late in the day,
Mm-hmm.
and we were with Don, and Don's like, "Hey, they're over here on this grass bed," and Don caught them there.
Yeah, he
But
did.
it seemed like 2 boats was too many. That's what it seemed like to me. Like if you added a boat there, one boat's going to catch him, the other boat's not, because that school just was not big enough, I mean, he was in them and he caught beautiful fish. He really caught some really nice yellow perch.
The school seemed like it was about the size of like a truck.
Yes.
Like about the size of your boat.
Yes,
About the size
about
of
the size of the school. And so he was constantly moving around it, and I'm like, yeah, that's hard. That's hard for 2 boats to fish that small a school. And so when we went back over to the other spot, we had not seen them on the graph the first day.
No.
We didn't see them on the graph. But the second day, it lit up like the 4th of July. Like it was like, oh, what's that? In fact, we saw them on the graph before we caught them.
Yeah.
And I
it was
like,
hours.
yeah, it was like,
we left them and then came back,
I
and
was
all
like,
of a sudden
there is a massive amount of fish right here in this one little area. And we
Mhm.
fished it for a little while. We got a couple bites, but we never got anything to hook up. And we went on, and then we were like, let's go back over there and see. And that's when evidently they turned on, or we put it in their face the right way, or whatever it might have been. But then it turned on, and we just started catching fish, and we were catching fish. We left them biting. We were like, yeah, we're pretty good. We don't have to keep harassing these guys.
right.
And so we went on back to the house at that point.
Mm-hmm. No, it was a good few days of fishing.
Yeah. I enjoyed it immensely. It was a long ways away, but I did enjoy it.
But it translates, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up fishing bobbers and, that kind of stuff. So it was really neat to do that again because,
Well, it's second nature to me. Maybe it's not second nature to everybody else, but I think that's almost everybody when they're 4 or 5 years old, 3 years old, getting started fishing. That's how you kind of start,
mm-hmm.
is at that level. You don't have to have a whole lot of technology. I mean, I started with a Snoopy rod. For those of you who don't know who Snoopy is, go look that up. There might be somebody that doesn't. But I started, I mean, it was an orange and white Snoopy rod. It's 3 foot long. And with that, it wasn't a slip bobber, but it was a cork and a hook.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I learned how to fish. And then I did a ton of it all through my childhood, teenage years, college years. I mean, that's what my dad and I did. That's what we loved doing. So that's how we fished. I was very simplistic in my fishing. And so when it was like, oh, we're going to do this for yellow perch, I was like, yes, we are. I'm good with that. So you don't have to have a lot of investment. It's fairly simple. You need a bait shop, or you need to go catch your own bait. We use crickets, little tiny golden shiners.
In terms of
wax worms work. Night
terms-
crawlers work. Anything like that you can put on the end of a hook works.
a couple split shots, number 6 hook, a few bobbers, and a tube of crickets. In terms of return on investment in the fishing world,
It's not much.
that's probably your highest yield.
And the truth be told, you can do that without the bobber.
Sure.
You could get a couple split shots and a hook, put the bait on the end of it, and throw it out there, and a yellow perch will hit that off the bottom.
Sure.
You don't have to. Now, take it from a cork aficionado.
He did bring out some fancy corks.
It's enjoyable to cork fish and watch that cork go underwater. It just is. My dad will attest to this. You will actually dream about it after you've done it. That is not a lie. You will dream about that cork going underwater after you've done it.
So this is a theme. This is a thing. I want y'all to see the cork that Corey gave me. Look at this fancy thing. It's balsa, and it's all painted, and it's a thing of beauty. Now I want to show you the cork that I brought to use. It is,
And I've used a ton of corks
probably
like
15 years old. It looks like a beaver chewed on it, and it looks like I drug it down the hallway.
And I've used a ton of corks that way. So
And to be honest, both will work.
both will work. That's exactly right.
But he is a cork aficionado. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm going. Powell, you got anything to add to this?
That's an impressive cork. I've never used
This is
a cork
fancy.
like that. And
Yeah.
I've never used the word cork before. I
Yeah.
always called them bobbers. So
So, fun fact again, My dog's name is Cork.
There you go.
So I've used a few corks if I decided to name a dog after one.
That's right.
But
You think I'm joking about the dreaming part? We would fish, come back, eat lunch, take a nap, and you dream about that cork going underwater.
well, you stare at it long enough.
Yes, it's something about you looking at that cork for that long a period of time of the day, and you're watching the cork go down, especially if you're in a high active fishery. It gets in,
And it's brightly colored
it's
on a kind of natural background, so it kind of burns into your.
Yep, it imprints in your mind, and then you fall asleep, and when you for whatever reason when you dream, that's what you dream about. I
dream about catching fish all the time.
Yeah.
So that's not shocking. So.
Yeah.
What else do we need to know about Perch or Lake Appalachia or Powell? Got anything you want to share?
I'll just share that the yellow perch are fairly widespread in District 9, but they tend to show up in the smaller reservoirs that don't have the best fishing. So they're nutrient-poor reservoirs. And so they show up in Glenville and Santitla, and they're worth looking for. And I've met people that have caught them trolling too, which blows my mind, but they've shown me photos,
Sure.
so I believe them. They're a neat little resident of District 9.
There's no doubt to me that they will hit small crankbaits, small jerk baits being trolled, anything of that nature, live bait being trolled. There's no doubt in my mind, that in fact, if you go to say an Appalachia or a Glenville or something like that, and you don't know anything about the fishery, like it's first time, don't know anything about yellow perch, but that's what you're looking for. That's probably how I'd start.
Yeah.
Either that or look for a grass bed or look for some kind of structure. But if you're not having success, start trolling around looking for schools. And then when you catch one, stop. And then focus your efforts on that school. That's how I would approach it probably.
One of the things I learned, I did learn a thing or two.
Well, I learned a lot.
I learn something every time I
go
head up
fishing.
there. But one of the things I learned, everything we were throwing, the beetle spin, the minnows, well, the crickets weren't minnow imitations. They were actual crickets. But when I've thought about perch fishing, I think, well, they eat little minnows and stuff. But when we were cleaning those fish, they were slam full of crawfish.
Yep.
So especially the larger ones had crawfish in their bellies. So, they're eating all kinds of stuff down there. So I didn't expect to see that either. So
that doesn't surprise me at all.
I mean, they're in the same
area
spots.
Yep.
So
you run out in front of me, I'm going to eat you. It's a dog eat dog world out there. If you didn't know,
it's a perch eat crawfish world.
That too.
So,
well, I think one of the things that we really haven't discussed is they are throughout the state. They've some populations have waned, like in the Catawba, those populations have gotten less. They're not as abundant as they once were, particularly like in the southern Catawba for whatever reason. Used to have a lot of yellow perch in Lake Norman. They exist, but it's very nominal. Really popular in Albemarle Sound. I'm trying to think. I want to say there was a commercial fishery for them in the
especially in the Chowan,
particularly in the Chowan, towards the western part of the Sound.
Scuppernong, Yoakum, all those.
Yeah, there was commercial fishing for them at one point in time. That Sound has turned a little saltier than it used to be, and so
especially this year.
Yeah, especially this year where there's very little to no rain. But in general, that was a very fresh body of water. The Albemarle Sound was very fresh, and so yellow perch were there quite and quite abundant. Particularly in my childhood, I remember that was the place for yellow perch. That was the place for commercial fishing for yellow perch. So once again, we're on that southern end of their range, but when you do find them, a lot of times you find them in fairly good numbers, particularly in the eastern part of the state. You'll find them in fairly good numbers. But I really enjoy fishing for them. They're very tasty to eat. Once again, it's a pleasurable experience to go there. It's a long ways away. Hiwassee, Appalachia, Murphy area. If you're not from there, it's worth going to see. And here's, we talked about this on our road trip because you got nothing else to do but time to talk about things. But you go through the Nantahala Gorge coming from the east. You go through, there's other ways to get there, but the way we went is through the Nantahala Gorge, which is it's the Nantahala Gorge. Everybody knows what that looks like that's been there.
Yeah.
But then when you get to the other side of the Nantahala Gorge and you get into the Valley River and you get to where it's unlike any place that I've seen in North Carolina, where it's it's almost like you're on a plateau.
Yeah.
And the valley is so wide and the mountains are all around you. It reminds me, I mean, it's not the Rocky Mountains, but it reminds me of that kind of scenery, but with Appalachian mountains around you.
Yeah.
It's just this wide expanse of a valley. The river's not very big. I mean, the Valley River's, a stone's throw across, but that river has cut that valley for so long. And it's just such a different place. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are other places, but I haven't seen that in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And you go from that tight Nantahala Gorge, high walled mountains, fast moving water, and all of a sudden it just opens up into this massive valley. And you're like, that's super cool.
Yeah. Prehistorically, the Nantahala River did a 90-degree turn and went down through the Valley.
Oh.
So historically it was, I mean, this is, what mammoths and stuff around, but it was, so there was a lot more water back then.
That makes
back in the
sense.
day.
Yeah, because I even said to him, I was like, it's amazing that tiny river would, it's not that, I mean, I've been on the Valley River. It's not something that you would be like, oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Would cut that kind of path, but it's a pretty wide expanse.
And the other thing to think about is when you go through Topton and you start coming down into the valley, you're really leaving the mountains behind you.
You are.
Yep. And so and in fact, the valley flows into Hiwassee, and like on the northern end of the Hiwassee, it's all mountains and Appalachians. And then on the southern end, it's Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's what you think Georgia is going to look like. So we tend to get, so
nothing but bulldogs everywhere.
So anyway, so you get,
I love how you said it. It's the Appalachians on the north, and on the south, it's just Georgia.
I'm a hillbilly, so I judge things by the mountains. And so when I go across the Hiwassee into the southern end of it, it starts to look like the Piedmont of North Carolina to me.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that look to it for sure.
It's a lot more hilly and rolly kind of things.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. So if you want to catch yellow perch in the mountains, it's a great place to go. There's a lot of other, as you've heard us do podcasts, and we're going to do one more. There's a lot of different species you can catch. I mean, you can catch multiple species in the day.
Mm-hmm.
If you go at the right times of the year, you can catch stripers, you can catch walleye, you can catch big trout, you can catch yellow perch. Because those reservoirs, Hiwassee and Appalachia, are right there together. I mean, the boat ramps are not that far apart. And so you can be on both reservoirs within a given day if that's what you so desire to do, and catch all those things. So it's really a cool place. That's why we went back. Mm-hmm. It was such a cool place the first time, and we talked to Don about all the different fisheries, and he's like, man, you really need to highlight these things. These things are really cool, and he's right. They are really cool.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that you guys have discovered District 9 and they come out and got to appreciate some of the gems in it.
No, it's a really neat place. And yeah, if you're interested in catching yellow perch in particular, really those western lakes and the Albemarle Sound area is your two best bets.
Those are your two best bets for sure. Yeah, the Piedmont is kind of a place where they occur, but it's not like I don't know of a good population.
Yeah, they occur, and also a lot of them aren't really catchable size.
Yeah, they're real small.
Populations, the fish don't get very big.
Yeah, they're 2 to 3 inches at best most of the time is what you see. Maybe a 4-incher, something small. You don't really see good populations in the Piedmont, even though they occur there. Is it time for questions?
I think so. I think it is time for questions. So, got an email from Mr. Wong. You guys are doing great about sending us your questions and sharing your information, sharing your fishing stories with us, and we really appreciate it. Mr. Wong fishes up near Lillington on the Cape Fear River.
Okay.
So the top end.
Top end of the Cape Fear River.
Which is a very neat area.
It is.
Rocky River, hard to get to.
Yep.
And generally places like that have good fishing, and that was
I
kinda
went on a
what he was
boat trip
telling me
one
about.
time. We'll talk about that later on another podcast.
It-
Might have seen all that.
It can, yeah, it takes a lot of a boat trip to get there.
Yes.
He was catching some bass, and he wasn't sure what they were. And he texted me the pictures, and they were Alabama bass. We'll put a picture of it up. But the other interesting thing there is
Were they Alabama bass?
well, that's where I'm getting to, is that is one of the places back before we knew what we know now, where we actually stocked spotted bass there eons ago in that river.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me, hey, are these spots or Alabamas? Well, the biological answer is it's hard to tell because they're so similar. There's really not distinguishing features. So I texted and I called our local biologist and said, what's the latest genetics data on there? It is likely due to the size that they were spotted bass.
Mm.
However,
No, don't tell me.
Like many places, the genetics have indicated that there could be some Alabama bass that are entering the system, which brings me to my next.
Please stop moving fish.
Please don't move fish. And Alabama bass are the flagship example, but we have others: blue cats, flatheads, flathead catfish. That is, and there's several
river herring.
Yep, river herring's another good one, especially in Powell's district.
Yes.
These fish have been moved around and they've caused problems for the native fish, even with the best laid plans. And we, in the past, we have been responsible for some of these as well.
Wildlife Commission's been guilty of it.
But
not Alabama bass. But
not Alabama bass. But once you make a mistake, you try to make new mistakes, not the same ones over and over again. And it definitely seems that while, Powell said earlier, yellow perch came on the scene, they weren't necessarily native. A lot of times when a fish comes on the scene, it causes more problem than benefit.
Correct.
And this is yet another example of that. So, So we can't say that enough that, there's a lot going on out there, but, don't move fish around. In fact, if you stock a fish into public water without a stocking permit, it is a blue light special. And, somebody with a wildlife diamond and blue lights on his truck will be happy to get your autograph on that.
Yeah.
So, our next question is, we talked a couple podcasts ago about striped bass with Jeff and talked about the Watha hatchery. And Mr. Carson emailed me and said, you said we aren't meeting our recovery goals. And he said, what does that mean? Do you want me to take that, or you want to run your mouth for a second?
No, you go ahead.
Okay,
It would seem very rude of me to answer that question for you. But if you get it wrong, I'll be sure to jump in.
Okay. Well, Powell, do you want to answer this question?
Oh, I'm not touching that.
Okay, he's not touching this one. So it's fallen to me. We have stocked, in particular, the Cape Fear, the Noose, and the Tar for over 20 years. The initial goal of that project was to reestablish a self-sustaining population of fish for probably not just one reason, but probably a handful of reasons. We have not been able, even if you'd think you would stock and you'd stock and you'd stock and you'd eventually hopefully build up a threshold of fish where they can biologically sustain themselves eventually. That has not happened in those systems. And basically it seems like there's a bottleneck probably in that really early life history stage, because the fish we stock seem to do fairly well in the river. There are some adult mortality issues that we're experiencing, but the fish are spawning in the river. We get spent females, we see spawning fights, we see aggregates of fish, we've collected eggs. The egg viability seems to track with other populations of fish, and yet through all that, we're not seeing small stripers swimming around in the river. It's a very popular fishery. We want people to catch those fish. So so we have kind of made a shift in management that it is a put, grow, and take fishery. May or may not be exactly what we wanted it to be, but that's what it is. And so we're going to perpetuate that fishery by continued stocking efforts as we move into the future, but also try to really identify what is causing that bottleneck at that juvenile, really larval stage seems to be where the problem is. And so yeah, when we say we're not meeting our recovery goals, it's that the fish really is only being perpetuated by our stocking efforts. So that is the $20 answer to a $100 question. So
Yeah, it's good enough.
and we get a lot of questions about that. So if you guys need more information, feel free to reach out to us. Last question, and it's we're walking on a theme here. If I purchase live minnows or bait from any bait shop, is it safe to bring them to any body of water for use? I've heard of people introducing new species or spreading diseases by doing this, and I don't know if it's an urban legend or not.
Well, it's not an urban legend. So
We just kind of talked about part of this.
Yeah. So it's actually against the law to dump your bait bucket into a body of water. Can't do that. So if you go and purchase these animals somewhere else, that's completely legal. Fishing with them, completely legal. The likelihood of that animal, having a bunch of those animals survive and reproduce is slim to none. Not saying it's impossible, but slim to none if they've been used on a hook. But if you dump the ones you don't use that are live swimming around, you dump them all out in a group, more than likely you just populated that lake with those animals.
Especially if it's any number of extra
Especially,
fish.
if it's, if you got 25 of them, you just did something. Unless they come by and somebody comes by and eats them all, some fish comes by and eats them all, that you have populated the lake with them. I don't know who this is, but he's right. You could be introducing disease. You could be, more than likely though, you're creating a new population of animals in that lake. Now, if you were to use a cast net and catch those animals in the lake, and you put those animals back after being done and used, that's not illegal. It's the whole bringing them to the lake that they weren't in there to start with, and then dumping them. That is illegal. That is against the law. So we would tell you not to do that. It is a blue light special, and it's just not good for the fishery. You can cause. That's one of the reasons why we have river herring in the West.
Yes.
Is people caught river herring somewhere else, or they went and bought river herring, because you can buy river herring in certain locations. Went and caught river herring in another place, brought them there, fished with them, and then dumped what they had left over into the lake, and the river herring established, and it ruined walleye fisheries across the western part of our state. It is a classic example of why you should not do this. And so, anyway, that's my answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like blue light specials either.
No, we don't want you to get a ticket.
No, that's right.
Appreciate him reaching out and asking this and make sure he's right.
Yep.
So he also asked if he could bow fish from the bank. Short answer to that is yes, you can.
You can.
You just have to make sure that the bank you're standing on, like if you went to a city park or your state lake, you just got to make sure that the manager of that property is okay with that.
Hey, kids over on the playground.
Right. So, but if you were like, say, on one of our game lands, and there was a piece of water that ran through it, as long as it was a non-game fish,
correct,
that you were shooting, you could do that.
You could do that. I do know people do that in very shallow rivers that they can walk in rocks. They'll do that.
Right.
So it is doable. It's just make sure you're in a legal spot to do it.
Right. And that was what I told him, is it's more, can you have the bow where you're at?
Yeah.
Than as far as can you bow fish from the bank? Yes. As long as it's legal to have the bow there.
That's right.
So,
okay. Who's our winner for the month?
I think JP, because he asked 2 questions.
Oh.
And we used them both. So
2 questions get you a winner. Yeah. Well, good.
So,
well, we've talked about yellow perch in the West, and that's been fun. I've enjoyed that. I enjoyed our trip. I thought it was excellent, and we had a good time and got everything we were supposed to get done and experience, so it was good.
It was. And if you're interested in going and catch a yellow perch, head west, because there's a lot, all those lakes in that general area have that opportunity.
Hold some populations of them for sure. Powell, thanks for being here once again. We enjoyed having you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to y'all next time.